Hey guys, it's Danielle again, and I thought today would be a good time and I had the opportunity to sit down and tell you a little bit of my hypnobirthing experience, so my birth story with my daughter, but then also how hypnobirthing, quite frankly, changed my life. And I know it sounds, dramatic, or it sounds like, okay, sure, I get it, you do this for a living, but this is the God honest truth. And maybe once you know a little bit more about me, you know why I'm such a believer in this type of work. And I don't know if you can call it hypnobirthing. I don't know, there probably isn't really a word for it, but the actual practice and the work that I did in preparation for the birth of my daughter, I kind of just applied it to every day, and kind of once I went through that and seeing what I could do, it made that much of a difference for me. So a little bit of a backstory. I come from a divorced home. My parents were divorced when I was very young, and this is not going to be as much of a professional video, I realize, as my other ones, because it's a little more emotional, so there's going to be a lot more so bear with me. But I come from a divorced home, and without going into the details, there's a lot more to it than just a divorce. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of baggage, and I was in the middle of it. And I was very young, and it was a long, drawn-out process for many years. My mother remarried, had two boys, whom I love and whom, are my brothers, but I've always felt a little different, a little separate from the family. So growing up, not knowing that other half of yourself does affect you. Then when I was very little, my first brother was diagnosed with cancer, and then the second brother, who came along a little bit while later, got hurt very badly from a chemical spill on his face. And he's fine now, he's completely healed, 100% back to normal, but I was only 12 at the time when that happened. There's just been a lot of really scary things like that, like cancer, like a chemical spill, a dog attack, that kind of stuff that affected me as a child, because I was pretty much all under the age of 12 when this stuff happened. So, needless to say, when I was growing up and even when I met my husband, I was very much a victim mentality. It was very much, these things happened to me, because a lot had happened to me without my control, because I was a child, and they were very stressful, emotional, terrible things to have to go through. So I had definitely very, very much a mindset of, I'm a victim. These things are happening to me. I have no power in this. And I was not a very empowered person. I came across as very confident because that was my external shell. That was my armor, my protection. But I was very much a anxiety-filled, hurt, angry person on the inside. So when we became pregnant with our daughter, just a year after getting married, I kind of panicked because I felt like I did not have a good grasp as to who I was yet. I was 24, so it's pretty young to bring another human being in the world and to raise it, but I freaked out a little bit because I felt like there was so much of my own childhood I needed to process before I helped someone else, like create one for someone else. So the hypnobirthing work that I did during pregnancy really made me stop and process everything. That's not to say that, in the middle of a situation I'd stop and ponder and go through all the emotions, but rather than it being something that was happening to me, it was something that I was taking active participation in, and my response to it was my responsibility. Because as an adult, it is. When you're a kid, it's a little bit different, but as an adult, it does matter how you respond, and it especially matters when you have your own children. So hypnobirthing definitely taught me how to keep the peace within myself and not freak out, not have an anxiety attack, and it's kind of hard to explain it, but it kind of just gave me that confidence boost that I needed. It was telling me all these positive things about myself throughout my pregnancy. Like this one thing that my body was working so hard to do was saying, you're doing it perfectly, you're doing it wonderfully, your body's working hard, and it's perfectly designed. which is not something that I fully believed about myself up until that point. So I looked at it as preparing for my daughter's birth. So when it came time to have her, it made me realize how powerful I really am and how much of I have an effect on what happens to me, or in my life, should I say. So also in that, with the lack of control that I experienced, I definitely wanted to control my birth. I wanted it to be a natural birth. I wanted it to be, I wanted to be super aware of everything happening, and no medications, no this. I was going to breastfeed perfectly and all the really supernatural type stuff. But sometimes life is designed a little bit differently, and things happen to mold you into a different person. Rather than my body going into labor naturally on its own, my daughter was malpositioned, unbeknownst to me and my doctor. We didn't do any extra ultrasounds towards the end of the pregnancy because I didn't want any, because I was fearful of the effects. So I was very much like, no, we can't do that. This will be fine. My body's going to do this. And I got to about 10 days past my due date, and I was miserable. I was in a lot of pain. I was ready to have her. I just was so uncomfortable. And we decided to have an induction. And this was completely my own choice. This was, no pressure from my OB or anything like that, which I really appreciate. And we started the induction. The natural, crunchy, natural hypnobirthing, like I'm steadfast in this person, is going to have an induction. And I was just at the end of my rope. So we, went to the hospital, started the whole process, and throughout it with Pitocin, this thing that I was taught to be afraid of, that it was going to hurt extra, and it was going to be, more intense contractions than normal or natural, I rocked it, to be honest. Maybe my memory is a little bit skewed, but it literally was like lifting really, really heavy weights, and it was something I had to breathe through and work through, and I loved it. I love that I could feel my body and my baby working to do this thing, to bring her lower and lower through my body and out. It wasn't until we were at about 7 or 8 centimeters dilated, I think we were 10 hours into our induction, that we were at 7 or 8 and we stalled there. And when I say stalled, like the labor was continuing, I was still having contractions, I was, we're still seeing the monitor, everyone's heart rate was good, everything like that, but I didn't progress past that. And I went from, working through this and breathing and talking to my husband and him talking to our daughter and just being joyful throughout the whole experience. I went from, that to pain. It definitely felt different. It felt like something was wrong. Quite frankly, it felt like something was wrong in my pelvis. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be feeling that. That's not good. I don't know what that is, but with every contraction, there's an intense pressure on my pelvis, and it's not relenting. So my doctor checked and saw that, or felt that she was posterior, and her chin was maybe not all the way, but it was not tucked down like preferred. So basically, if I would have had the right size pelvis or what have you, she would have, she's trying to come out face first almost. So it was at that point my doctor told me, "You have done so well. I'm so impressed with how you've handled all of this," because he knew my whole, soapbox stance on natural birth. He said, "You have done everything you possibly can, but I don't think she's going to come out this way. It doesn't seem like it. And from what you're describing to me, it doesn't sound like it is, like it's going to change." And we took a little bit more time. I think maybe another hour went by and still nothing changed. So for your body to be stopped there was pretty odd. And my doctor, came back in and checked things again. When no progress had happened, he mentioned he had the conversation with me, and he said, "You've done you've done so well. You've done everything you can, but I think that we need to talk about a C-section. And he's like, you know, you and I have talked throughout your pregnancy about my experience in that, and you know my skill set, because I told him I researched him about his C-section rates and his experience, and I felt very confident that if I needed that, he would be the doctor I'd want him to perform that surgery. So he gave us a half an hour for Zach and I to talk, and I always remember that half an hour because it was before we're meeting our daughter, but it was also acknowledging what we just went through and being okay to let go and being okay to say, this is how our daughter needs to come into the world. It's just the position that she's in. So, speaking to our strength and trying whatever we could, and then being okay to be flexible with how she needed to be born, and knowing that we did our research with this doctor and knowing that we felt completely comfortable with him performing this surgery meant the world to us. So we went back at, I think, about 11:30. That was a Monday night, and our daughter was out at 12:05 a.m. This was at Troy Beaumont with Dr. Kale, the Kale Clinic. I don't mind saying his name because he knows her for everybody to him, because he is an excellent OBGYN and an excellent human being. So through all of that and going through almost every gamut that I could think of with birth, I had natural labor experience. My body tried to go into labor on its own. I had an induction. I didn't have an epidural, but I had, the spinal for the hip, for the C-section. And then having major surgery. All the while, that was not my goal, was, I think, makes a huge difference for my hypnobirthing teaching, because I've been there. I've been in that letdown. But the important thing is that this work helps you be able to let go and to not have to have control and to be peaceful no matter what the situation is. And that's truly what has helped the most after we had her. Without going into too much detail, but when you don't have your careers completely mapped out, when you get pregnant, when you just buy a house, when you haven't been married for very long, when you don't actually have a real career, when you have your baby, life can get really, really messy and really hard. And kids, they do stuff that can sometimes put them in danger, or they just have things where it's just like they have when they start walking, when they start crawling, when they start eating solid food, when you're driving a car. I've been severely rear-ended twice since having my daughter. She's had a few choking episodes. She's had really severe colds where she's so blocked up that she vomits. There's a lot of situations in life where we need to know how to be able to respond in a balanced way. I won't say a positive way, but in a balanced way, to feel what it is, but then still be present and still do something. To be able to be alert and awake for your child's for your child choking is a pretty important one. To keep your cool throughout all that is probably the biggest one I've seen hypnobirthing do that with. But it changed my outlook on myself. It changed my outlook on life, because things no longer happen to me. Things happen, and how I respond is an active participation in what is happening. And I can make different choices to go down different paths, but there's nothing that's happening to me that makes me a victim. I don't view myself as a victim anymore. And I'm so happy that I've been able to go through that, because I'm now that person that I want to be for my daughter. And I always try to convey this to my clients as much as I can without having a sob fest at class, but this is why I teach this work, because you have no idea what you're capable of unless you decide what you want out of life. And once you decide what it is and you make the plan to go for it, you're going to surprise yourself as to what you can do. I'm sitting here now and I'm home every day with my daughter. We get to do lots of fun things. We eat healthy food. We own a home that we love. And I get to teach at night when my husband is home with our daughter. And that is the dream life. I think the only thing that might be different is if we add another kid into this mix, we need to live somewhere else. But this is pretty much what I wanted. This is this is what I put on my dating profile before I met my husband. So that's a different story for a different time. But hypnobirthing makes a huge difference, I think, in an expectant couple's life. It just depends on to what degree you need to be more aware and someone to wake you up and say, hey, you're here. This is your life. Let's participate in it. So this is your birth. Let's participate in it. Let's be there. Let's be present for our children's entrance into the world. So regardless of how you decide to do that or how it actually happens, you can have a positive birth no matter what that birth is. On the side of the road, at home, in the hospital, birth center, cesarean, epidural, induction, all that. It can be a positive experience. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it's a long video, but I just felt that I should share a little bit about my background and my experience and why I do this, because I feel so blessed to look back on this year and see all the work that I've been allowed to do in these couples' lives and seeing it affect my life. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a great night.